Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay, so I'm going to read. So my name is Tracey Collett, and I'm an associate professor in medical sociology at the University of Plymouth Peninsula Medical School. And the title of my talk is Knotworking, K-N-O-T, Knotworking, and the role of trust in interdisciplinary groups. So whilst interdisciplinary learning and teaching in higher education is celebrated in education, research and business, and integration is a buzzword in undergraduate medical education globally, little has been written about interdisciplinary work as it takes place in practice. It feels like it's assumed that lecturers just know how to do it. Research on the experience of doctoral students, however, suggests that significant tensions threaten the goal of interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary education, because unspoken epistemological and ontological contradictions often lead to conflict about the importance of subject matter, research methods, education, academic status, all these things. Further, attempts at resolving these problems often lead to poorly conceived, hybridized new forms of knowledge. Within my field of work, although integrated medical education is the gold standard, the experience of the chalk face is described in the practice literature in terms of roadblocks, characterized by integration, particularly when transitioning from a traditional curriculum, appears characterized by unique challenges, opposing perspectives, negative opinions, turf wars, a lack of flexibility, a lack of will, resistance, a lack of motivation, a Herculean task, and these are all words from the literature. In his 2008 book, From Teams to Knots, Activity Theoretical Studies of Collaboration and Learning at Work, Ergo Engström connects individual experience to structure, the private and the public, using a conceptual framework that many might be familiar with called cultural historical activity theory, or CHAT. CHAT is valuable for two broad reasons. One, the work of an organization is seen as a social activity with an objective that is mediated by the artifacts used, the rules guiding the organization, the communities of practice, and the way in which the labor is divided. Two, the activity of an organization is seen in cultural and historical terms. So, for example, medical education, the training of doctors, as an activity, takes place today within the context of the marketization of higher education, the ongoing mass customization of the market, and ongoing variation with respect to the types of health professionals produced. So they're always creating new health professional types. So with CHAT as a framework for analysis, Engström draws on a rich theme of sociology, anthropology, and linguistics to highlight the negotiated quality of the mundane, informal, often unspoken everyday interactions that underpin the team processes that form the bedrock of an activity system. Engström and others argue that individuals in collaborative settings can either, often inadvertently, block activity or enable it. Blocking is common, as in conventional teamwork, there is a requisite to mask tension and maintain appearance as a cohesive group. Knotworking, or negotiated co-configuration, enables activity, but it's hard to do, taking considerable skill. Knotworking centers on the adaptability of individuals and their in-the-moment ability to tie and untie various threads of knowledge from different areas to accomplish specific activities over time or enable new ways of thinking, doing, and being. This is a way of working that resonates with feminist literature on kinship networks, on embodied working, compassionate care, emotional labor, careful working, in the academy, and with literature in social psychology under the umbrella of salutogenesis, which is wellness. So knotworking involves the ability to, for example, notice and critically interrogate tensions and disturbances in order to reveal the underlying differences in assumptions and experiences in a way that the team as a whole can learn, and to actively notice possibilities for communication so that new possibilities emerge. So to illustrate this, I'm going to share with you two semi-autoethnographic examples based on my experience as a sociologist in medical education. In my first example, the lead for induction, Zach, has informed me that induction had moved from 1 to not 2 weeks, and that the emphasis is now entirely on new students getting to know university systems and each other. Zach, a qualified doctor with a short history in medicine and 7 years in medical education, wants us to share our introduction to the cross-cutting themes, the collective name we give to sociology, psychology, humanities, population health, etc., to create something different. I can see what Zach wants us to do, but I'm really busy and I'm worried that I won't have the time to do all this. So here is our email exchange following an invite to the induction planning meeting. And note that I talk about the school's values in this, and the school values include that we are a socially minded medical school, right? Hi, Zach. Apologies, but I won't be able to make the induction meeting as I have to be a buddy to a person who's coming into the lecture at the same time. I think Richard is attending, so he should be able to input to the cross-cutting theme stuff, as well as share induction thoughts in general. Hi, Tracey. That's fine. I know you caught me just before the lecture last time we spoke, but my thought was that we probably need to infuse your subjects a bit more widely and make some more explicit links to them. My main difficulty is on how they link vis-a-vis the school's value. I'm no media executive, so very happy to listen to any thoughts you have. My rapid response, misinterpreting cross. The cross-cutting themes are the school's values, crikey. I'll send an explanation when I have some time next week, or indeed, perhaps we can catch up and go for coffee sometime soon. Best wishes, Tracey. Hi, Tracey. I'm thinking my shocking lack of understanding might mean it is better if we have some coffee whenever you are able. Best wishes, Zach. My retraction. So sorry, Zach, if I came across as offensive. We'll send the dates later. Best wishes, Tracey. Zach's pickup. Hi, Tracey. Sorry if I showed my ignorance there. Cross-cutting themes of this has existed a long time before the school's values, so I didn't know if they were one and the same. Most of the time during induction, I think about timings and shepherdings. I think there's some good room to infuse cross-cutting themes throughout, but would need some idea of how best to do it. Can meet you or Richard about it. Best wishes, Zach. I'm going to discuss this more in the conclusion, which is in a minute. Right, we're doing this really fast. So my second example is called the informal interview for an internal role. This second example relates to my application for an internal post, right, within the school, within the postgraduate team. Hi, Tracey. Thanks for showing an interest in the role of Deputy Lead for the Masters in Clinical Education. We've had several expressions of interest, so we'd like to invite you to an informal interview on such and such a date. Is that okay with you? P.S. Could I pick your brains about a methods section for a paper I'm writing when I see you next? Glenn. The interview is online. There are 3 people interviewing, all of whom I know very well. The questions are as follows. Okay, welcome, Tracey. So, introductions. First, can you tell us a bit about yourself? What do you see as the main challenges facing the sector? How do you see the clinical educator of 10 years' time? Can you discuss one situation where you've led something that you're proud of? Can you tell us a bit about how we quality assure the clinical education programme? Can you expand on that? Can you explain what you mean? As you know, I'm more of a practical person and I'm interested in advancing the transferable skills agenda. How do you think you might be able to advance the transferable skills agenda in the MCLIN programme? Example 1 is an interaction showed trust on the part of myself and Zach, and what I think is great not working on the part of Zach, or both of us. We both got each other's stress and chose to work with it. I fly with Zach from time to time over the next few months. We murmurate together for a while, me drawing on his love of teaching, his experience of being a medical student himself not so long ago, and his love of politics, human rights and equity, him drawing on my knowledge of the curriculum and social sciences. He creates a great campus-wide game involving students going out in groups to take photos of the ways in which the campus is restricting or enabling to people wanting to participate in higher education. The session is complete with actors from our patient and public group who will all feed back to the students at the end. We're excited about this. It's a great introduction to the cross-cutting themes. There's mutual respect. The exchange leads to expansion, creativity, innovation. Example 2 is another example of what Angus Strong calls disturbed communication. The meeting was far from informal, far from the informal one that I'd expected. I felt misled and that colleagues had adopted a closed, authoritative stance. I left feeling humiliated. I chose to draw back and avoid. Example 2 was constrictive in Angus Strong's terms. To conclude briefly, interdisciplinary teaching in higher education is arguably hampered because the process of collaboration is under-theorized. The field is dominated by blunt instrumental description of how to work well in teams, and there is little real guidance in undergraduate medical, In undergraduate medical education, this neglect of theory is significant as poor interdisciplinary integration weakens the impact of reforms that seek to vastly improve medicine for the benefit of patients. Stronge provides an accessible theoretical framework for understanding the complexities of daily interdisciplinary work, which can recenter our gaze and connect further to ideas from feminist and other sociological and psychosocial literature, ideas that foreground rather than deny both the hustle of teamwork and the role of emotions, trust, and well-being. Thank you.
Yeah. There you go. Thank you very much. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And next, I believe we have Stronge. Yeah, very good. There's a little clip here thing so you can clip it simply.
Okay, I'll explain the prop in 2 seconds. Brought a little prop with me. I want to unveil a bit, and yes, something that I'm talking about timing, and I don't know if this rings any kind of autobiographical bells for you, and you can just slide that down and make it quicker, slower, etc. But I'll stop because it's going to be a little bit distracting, and it's all about timing. I haven't got much time, but I thought you'd just like the visual aid. So timing is everything. Reflections on Kairos and Coevality within my practice as an educator and a social being. The metronome was patented in 1815. For over 200 years, it's been used by musicians, composers, and others to develop and maintain a sense of timing. Nowadays, of course, a range of electronic versions and apps are available, but for me personally, I quite like the old school touch. It has a kind of gentle nostalgic chord, vividly brings back memories of struggling woefully with grade 2 piano. The pertinence for both our overall conference theme of murmuration and the wonderfully apt choice of the title Pulse of Life for this afternoon session, I hope will be quite apparent. The birds so inspire us with their enigmatically coordinated displays surely possess some sort of inner metronome to do what they do. For the human musician practicing her craft in a double sense, the metronome, meanwhile, helps her cultivate a proficiency of tempo and pace that, alas, in contrast to Starling's, doesn't always seem to come entirely naturally. Professional musicians will talk about learning to hit the click, playing in the pocket that the device shapes for them. But the metronome is something else, I think, because it also, for me, it represents a stand-in other against which the practicing musician molds his or her performance. There's therefore a profound resonance with notions of interactivity and presencing. The metronome is the other that's there for me, if there's no other there, even, if that makes sense. Composers, Beethoven was one of the first, often started to indicate metronome marks on the score, so that the sense of timing initially only active in their private creative imagination becomes resurrected in every actual performance. And resurrected is an interesting word here because it's piquant to note that another of the uses to which the metronome's been put historically is to help healthcare students, medical students and others perfect their technique in resuscitation, in CPR. All this brings us to questions of timing in relation to ethnography and autoethnography, and to the two concepts that I foreshadowed in my title, Coevality and Kairos. In his influential book, Time and the Other, the anthropologist Johannes Fabian suggests there's an inherent and unavoidable slippage between the communicative interaction, the ethnographer, so any ethnographer, not just the auto-ethnographer, is party to within a shared present. That's the coevality. And there's a slippage between that shared present and the representation of that interaction long after the date in teaching and writing. Conventionally, we refer to both these framings as ethnography. And as Fabian himself makes clear in later reflections, his main target in this deceptively simple intervention is to expose what he sees as the unexamined denial of coevality within the anthropological tradition. This tends to reinforce an absent other, an other of another time, and thus alien to and apart from our subjective experience. Fabian's critique is intended to sensitize us to this disjunctive aspect of our practice and reorientate as far as possible to what he describes as the speaking with, as opposed to the speaking about dimension of ethnography. Now, autoethnography equally, I feel, inevitably reproduces this allochronic gap between presence and representation, but with the additional twist that the other in question is me, myself. Yes, myself, but a past self that I'm different from and can never fully recover. Yet perhaps the essential direction of travel that Fabian appeals to in contrasting speaking with and speaking about remains the same. My second concept, Kairos, has complex intellectual lineage, which there's no time to go into today, but it's usually deployed in opposition to chronos, clock time, and to signify ideas about the right time, the critical moment, the time of opportunity. In a word, it returns us to the image of timing. So without further ado, and very briefly, because after all, timing is everything, I want to conclude by sharing 3 very brief autoethnographic snapshots or fragments where broader questions are over both Kairos and coevality are foregrounded, and a sense of the ongoing demand on me, and by extension, all of us, to fail better in honing our metronomic sensitivity and responding to its deficiencies was, I think, placed in stark relief. And then I'll stop at that point, hopefully having done enough to at least provoke some further thought. So the first snapshot is from my teaching sort of embodiment, I guess. I'm worried about and feel increasingly annoyed with one of my academic tutees. The Christmas break is soon upon us, and we're supposed to have this mandatory meeting before then. But he initially doesn't respond to my emails, and when he does, he fails to turn up at the arranged time. We managed to rearrange for the final teaching week, but this time he shows up late and then tells me he has a class to go to in 15 minutes. I feel irritated and also harassed. To use a pointed metaphor, I'm put off my stroke, as my agenda for this meeting involves exploring in some detail the borderline grade the student achieved in a recent assessment. Nevertheless, I launch into my preconceived plan to address this before realizing what he wants most to use our remaining time to talk about are the financial pressures that he's been experiencing lately and how to go about getting a specific support grant that he's heard about. So second snapshot, which is more the organizational development, but again, Kairos and coevality. I'm invited to give a talk at a conference on artificial intelligence and assessment hosted by my school. I take this opportunity to explore a few aspects of what I feel are very interesting, wider macro sociological factors in the emergence of AI in relation to the rapidly changing world, for which, after all, we're supposed to be preparing our tomorrow's doctors, our students for. My sense in the room as I speak, however, and not for the first time, is that while people do see the relevance of this and are generous in their attention, there's a kind of residual cognitive mismatch between us, between me and them, a sort of nagging incongruity about the sort of explanatory level I'm trying to approach things at, and about what they clearly seem to feel to be the priority, which is the immediate challenge and choices about how best to accommodate breakthrough technologies in AI within the current assessment regime. And so later I sit and reflect on this and ask myself, how is it that I often feel this kind of mismatch? Because I do in various contexts, and I could go into that if I had time. But how might I have, in this particular occasion, approach this particular talk differently to meet the majority of my colleagues on shared ground. And then sort of just finally, and to conclude, expanding further even the focus to, so it's more than just a snapshot, I guess, broadening the focus even more radically to the point that the distinction I've appealed to between presence and representation, I think itself becomes blurred. So in a way, maybe this isn't autoethnographic in the accepted sense of the term at all. And yet I think it is. And this is an ongoing dilemma that I'm very conscious of, and revolves around and spins off these two dimensions of Kairos, the right time, and Coevality, me and you and you and you and you, now together. And its concerns are rather obviously, no spoiler here, our shared common horizon, which regardless of our take and where we are on a spectrum, encompassing fight, flight, resignation, acceptance or denial, regards the objective fact of radical climate change, global warming, and the way that this overwhelmingly destabilizes all of our futures. Put simply, I inevitably encounter this prospect as someone personally who in their early 60s, in a sort of what most I think would accept as a fairly natural way, increasingly begins to, I'd always began, but you think more of what your own mortality, and that seems natural. And yet at the same time, there's this something, this huge something that seems to be unnatural, or maybe more than natural. And it's the context of the potential mortality, at least, of pretty much the most generalized of which it's possible to conceive. As in the two other more mundane examples, a problematic of timing and the self-other relation emerges as central here. Broadly, I suppose the personal dilemma I want to share and leave you with is this: in the time that's left me, how might or ought I best adapt to, and perhaps in a minuscule way change, the time left to us? The Wells metronome seems to be on the point of breaking down on us, yet I aspire to learn better to play in the pocket and coincide my timing with the world's or with yours. Yep.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your presentation. Pascale, I believe you are up next. Let me put you on spotlight and remove myself. And then it is all you. We are trying the, you're going to put your video, I believe, yes? Or are we going to share it through the...
We'll try it. We see how it goes. I hope you can hear me well.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So my name is Pascale Wasching. I'm very sorry I'm not with you today, because I'm missing this physical presence of everyone in the room. I'm a doctoral student in psychology at the University of West London and a psychotherapist in training. And I would like to present you actually one of the first texts I wrote for my dissertation last year. And the premise is my personal story. 10 years ago, my mom went missing. She had Alzheimer, and she went for a walk in the French Alps where we come from. And while my dad was gardening, she never came back. We never found her. And what followed were years of desperation, trying to find her and to make sense of this experience. So with the help of Katrina, I started to research the experience of families of missing people. And I was shocked by the statistics. In the UK alone, 155,000 people go missing every year. That's more than the population of York. And worldwide, it's 8 to 12 million people, or the equivalent of the number of people having a stroke or being diagnosed with Parkinson every year. And research shows that for each person going missing, 12 people in their close circle will be impacted financially or emotionally from the person going missing. And those are staggering figures, yet we never hear about it. leaving families of missing people to be victims of moral injury and epistemic injustice. So here's the text. I remember us singing, giggling as kids, listening to my mom's favorite song from the 60s, shouting, "Aline!" playfully to the top of our lungs in the warm kitchen filled with the wonderful smell of heartful, comforting dishes my mom was baking. You see, my mom was a strong woman and a sweet soul. Food was a language. Her lyrics were sweet like honey, loveful, warmful. I remember her feeling so special to have a love song named after her, smiling, listening to us, and joining in. Little did we know that this song would become her reality, our reality, the lyrics depicting her fate as she went missing during a rainy month of May, 11 years ago, near a river she might have fallen into. Sorry. So I'm going to share the song. If you can pay attention to the lyrics, the translation.
J'avais dessiné sur le sol. Je l'ai gardé que ce doux visage comme une épave sur le sable mouillé.
I remember the dark veil of bewilderment closing like a heavy stage drape before our eyes as my brother and I listened to that song we had not heard for years on the radio while preparing to search for my mum. The visceral pain, the absurdity of life sung before us, telling her that her story had already been written and that we might not be able to change the denouement despite all. The absurdity of life, reminiscent of the myth of Sisyphus and Viktor Frankl, how to find meaning in the very midst of the desert, a way out of despair. As we were shouting Aline like cubs calling their mum for protection because they would not be able to survive alone in the wilderness without her, we were shouting Maman, Aline, at the top of our lungs because she would not be able to survive alone in the wilderness without us. Little did we know that the trauma of searching for her would still be as vivid today as 11 years ago, as we never found her. That's it.
Thank you so much. A small round of applause. Unsure if the microphone can pick up the applause from here, but thank you, Pascale, that was lovely. The next one, I believe, is Murmurations by Beth Morgan. Is Beth online? Yeah, it's very good.
Yes, I'm online and I'm planning to share screen if that's okay.
That's brilliant. I shall leave it up to you. Yes, there you are. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I hope that you can see what I can see.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. And thank you for that, Pascale. It was absolutely beautiful. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about a piece of creative critical reflection that I've written that deconstructs murmuration and considers how, as communities, we murmur concerns about those needing support, but then we ration our help both individually and collectively. So I want to share the loss of a neighbour and friend. Let's call him Alan. So I hope that some of the sharing might remind some people of sad times with friends and loved ones, and for that, I just want to sort of make you aware. I know that many of us might be touched by the demise of adult social care in the UK, and so this is a remembering of a recent loss for me and for my neighbourhood. So this is Alan, who's in his 80s, and just before Christmas 2023, he disappeared, spirited away by social services. Sorry. Oh, that's not helpful, is it? I'll just take that back because I don't want to show the next slide. Okay, so whenever I tell my story, others nod their own tales to tell. Community care is broken, but people keep this secret well. I took out Alan's bins each week, shopped for scarce resources during COVID, fixed his many cuts and bruises, shared stories, but mostly chatted over the bins. I'm fortunate that my social work career has taught me many things, but this was something very, very different for me. The years rolled on, the weekly bin collection continued, as did Alan's efforts to maintain contact, like the period of months when he would arrive on the doorstep with seemingly accidental cuts to hands or arms or legs, needing immediate attention. Unfortunately for me, my doorbell has a loud ring, and Alan wasn't shy in making good use of it. I often felt like Beth Davis in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, shuffling to see what was next in Alan's plan to keep me at his beck and call. Always a creature of habit, Alan enjoyed many transient relationships. He would chat with neighbours on his way back from the local shop, take taxis to town, attend church on Sundays, Age UK a day a week. Then he told me he had a new friend who shared a love of cinema. Fridays became cinema evenings. Alan rarely knew what he was going to watch or remembered much about the films, and he always paid for the treat. I became suspicious of the motives of his newfound young friend. My work history revolves around adult social care. The demise of such is a constant concern to me and my social work profession. I've had the privilege of working with many people living in the community. Some of these people have been taken advantage of. I teach social work students of telltale signs and indicators of possible neglect and abuse. Where the wild things grow. The homes of the needy become quickly weedy, Or are they just lazy? Dandelions, daisies, pushing through concrete to signal their plight. Students are taught that things might be fraught, and aversion to weeding could be a leading cause or concern when all is not right. Neighbourly queries become so soon weary of seeking the truth, are rather aloof as they pass by in haste, avoiding the blight. An unseemly sight. Let's hope he's all right. Suddenly, Alan became ill, forgetful, anxious, angry, fearful of eating, afraid of death and his own lack of agency, ranting and raging one minute, then mumbling in fear the next. Alan was hospitalised. On his return home, paid carers visited to support Alan with personal care and meal preparation. The professional response to Alan's behaviour from GP, paramedics and carers was variable. No one involved his community to help understand Alan's world. A few weeks later, Alan was spirited away by social services. By illicit means, I discovered that Alan had been placed in a nursing home at the other end of the city. I paid a visit as friend and neighbour. I phoned ahead and arrived a couple of days before Christmas. Lunch was between 1 and 2, so I went later. Alan's greeting was heartwarming. "Oh, Beth." I was touched and a little tearful. I was met by a helpful woman. "Come whenever you like, we've got nothing to hide." What a strange thing to say. Alan and I were taken to the empty dining room for privacy. "He's a one-to-one, so let us know if you need help." Why would my friend need such close attention? I was upset at the suggestion that he was a danger to himself or others. Old friend. On reflection, I have a question which I hope that you may answer. When you look at my old friend, who do you see? A stick-wielding angry man, an angry-wielding stick man, no longer compos mentis, no more free. No one speaks. Full, rich lives, but with nothing left to say. Just as I recall, people sitting round the wall, disconnected but for how they're waiting for the call of death, gasping that last breath of freedom from it all. Eating cold spaghetti hoops on soggy toast, Christmas cards from strangers, distrustful looking staff. Alan wants me to visit again. Girls on phones, just round the corner, low hushed tones, didn't we warn ya? Girls on phones, every spare minute, away from prying eyes, in all the nooks and crannies, out of sight of nannies and gramps, swooning with their champs, low paid, underrated, by the National Front they're hated, young women of colour filling the gaps of a system that's broken and under attack. I arrive on New Year's Eve day. He's no longer staying here. Nothing more to say. Confidentiality rules to follow. Obituary notices reveal that Alan is still alive, somewhere, spirited away by social services. Murmur, ration. What happens when those quiet voices, those questioning and concerned voices become less and less, more and more infrequent, and then finally stop? Just another empty home, decaying memories, growing wilderness where roses of love still bloom. Murmuration. Shape-shifting skies draw our eyes to the swirling masses, chattering classes, synchronicity assured as we are lured into their frenetic world of beauty. If we could only aspire, that bird on a wire, not murmuring, not rationing, but moving as one. Sunset starlings, safe and warm, with strengths together, flight and feather, voices blending, flight that's free and won't be tethered, warning of the threat of harm, doing so with innate charm, not murmuring, not rationing, but moving as one. Society could learn much from the murmuration of birds, coming together to keep safe rather than living in relative isolation. Neighbours moved their trough, which had become a doggy delight. The day before yesterday, a dog walker stopped me and asked if I knew about the change for another older neighbour and what might have happened to her 2 poodles. She's been moved into a residential setting. Nobody knew that was what was happening. And just to end with this quote by Holman, needless to say, neighbourhood action is not a panacea. Certainly, it shouldn't be used as an excuse for avoiding the large structural reforms needed in society, but the two are interwoven. The preventative neighbourhood is as much a vision as a concept. Why are we waiting to be spirited away? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I just want to say thank you to all the presenter, Tracey, all, Pascale, Beth, thank you all for your wonderful presentations. I believe we have a little bit of time for questions or comments, and I'll open it up to both online and on the floor. If anyone would like to say anything, comment, questions. Yes.
Up to you.
Thank you. I'd just like to say how moving this session was, really, how across all 4 papers. So, you know, the carelessness of people at work, even sometimes when perhaps they're just being careless because they're busy, but what an impact that can have on us. The, you know, Pascale and her brother and family's experience, and how I've heard you talk about it before, Pascale, how wonderfully you managed to express what happened to you, and the spirited away by social services. Just completely overwhelming session, really. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Gail. We do love to hear your comments always. Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I want to echo Gail's comments. I was really very moved. Tracey, my question is for you. I'm wondering about the difference between interdisciplinarity and cross-disciplinarity, and the kind of, I know you think about, or you speak about interdisciplinarity always in a power struggle type of way. Who's higher up in the hierarchy, and I've heard you speaking about that in the past in working as a sociologist in a medical school. The idea that the the medical professionals might kind of see themselves as superior in that specific, I don't know if that's your words, but that's sort of my take on it. So I'm wondering about, just going back to the question, I'm wondering about the difference between interdisciplinarity and cross-disciplinarity, and the power struggles that might kind of be associated with one approach and not the other, or is there something like it, or is it really quite similar in terms of the politics?
What do you hello? What do you mean by cross-disciplinarity? How are you?
Yeah, well, that's just what I read. So I don't know that there is something like cross-disciplinarity or kind of just dabbling into one discipline and really speaking from one. And interdisciplinarity, I don't know. I think I'm asking if that's more like egalitarian and or a more interwoven approach.
Yeah, I think, so I'm not familiar with writing on cross-disciplinarity actually, but so interdisciplinarity, I take to mean a weaving together, a fusing of disciplines that sort of has this goal of transcending eventually the kind of disciplinary silos in order to sort of pool the sum total of knowledge from different areas of thought to create a more powerful set of multi-dimensions kind of knowledge. So I think there's with respect to that kind of work, there's an unwritten assumption at the level of the everyday that makes that sort of work very, very difficult to do, because it, as you were saying, it's interwoven with intersubjectivities, and you know that whether that's a disciplinary subjectivity or you know a cultural subjectivity, that it's just all there at play within that work. So there's lots of textbook ways of doing that. So, you know, create learning objectives that kind of work together around a case, or make sure your disciplines are integrated vertically and horizontally, and use prior learning to come back and future learning. But actually the reality of doing it in everyday life is in my opinion and experience much more complex. So that I think, you know, I'm answering, you answered the question really in your reading. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll point online. I see no comments, but I don't want anyone to feel left out or anything. Oh, yes.
Like Paul, you were talking about like a lot about time. And I don't know if I maybe interpreted it wrong, but like sort of that short-term vision of time. Where do you see it with long-term? And, you know, I think especially in like Europe, we don't really look at things long-term. We sort of plan for the short term and how much capital we can gain in that short term.
I don't know if I have a clear answer to that question. I think, though, I was trying to focus this time on timing rather than time. Time has interested me a lot. And so I'm not quite sure, though, you know, I very much sort of on one level sort of see your point. If I'm kind of worried about a kind of climate change and environmental degradation and whatever, it's maybe that's the problem, and it's a very different timescale than most of, you know, the people I'm talking to, or if I'm worried about long-term macro social changes in my presentation, again, like, you know, I'm thinking of one timescale and they're thinking of another. But then I was almost going to refer back to Tracey's presentation, because I was wondering if, you know, timing was my attempt to reframe some of this dilemma to myself. And I was wondering what would have made that interview that you described better, and how much that seeming very frustrating for you and very much preventing a, you know, not being a good knot, being a bad knot. Was that about sort of timing, given that actually, you know, these people knew you, knew your commitment? Why didn't you just have a conversation about what you could do, rather than sort of some sort of, it almost seems like a throwback to, you know, an interview for your post. So it seems to be, you know, so it seems to be like just timing as a way of think, you know, it's how, so my question I was asking myself is each of those 3 episodes was how can I adjust? Can I get a little bit better, fail better, like I said, to adjust my timing to your timing, whether that's be you, the whole world, or whether that be you, the student in trouble, which was easier because I could throw out the bad timing of the school saying you must talk about, you know, his borderline performance and actually talk about what was behind his borderline performance. I've no doubt, which was his sort of money problems. I don't know if you wanted to come back on.
Only just to say that I think that, you know, we're talking a lot about kind of instrumental linear kind of ways of doing within institutions, and actually we outside of institutions we do things kind of in a very complex non-linear way, and I think that there are so many tools available for us that we could draw on, and I just want to share them with the institution, the world of institutions, because they're there, they've been worked on and honed. Like time is a wonderful concept to think with, and temporality, you know, not, you know, for teachers, for health professionals, for everybody. Yeah, you know, it seems such a shame that these wonderful conceptual tools aren't being picked up and used. And I feel quite strongly that we could theorize in a practical way what we do with time and with each other within these civic spaces, you know, so as to make them actually less pathological. So yeah, don't know, anyone else?
I think we might have now gotten to our time, as I'm aware that everyone's supposed to be getting a small break before the start. Oh yes, we have. We've overrun a little bit. So I'll allow everyone to go get some coffee and a quick toilet break. Yes, go on.
Can I just say to Beth and Pascale, the way that you narrated and spoke about your experiences was just like yeah, it was such an example of how to do autoethnography. It was really, really inspiring, and everyone here was just kind of sitting in real, you know, yeah. Thank you so much. It was an inspiration to hear both of those talks.
Yeah. Well, yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. And online, I do welcome you all back over to room 1, as there will be the final words for the day. No, keynote, another keynote. But it's room 2 is now closing, I'm afraid. So I will be ending it here. So thank you, everyone, and see you in room 1 and tomorrow. Thank you.